Hello guys, welcome back. So somebody made a request and I figured I would, and I've actually tried to make the Zeus video for a while now, but it's really hard to talk about Zeus. People get really heated up and people have very certain attitudes towards him. A lot of people won't work with him either because they're terrified of him or they think he represents everything a man shouldn't be, neither of which is very fair to Zeus. He's a complex deity. He's a lot like working with Loki, that you're gonna kind of get what you can accept. Odin's the same way. Like, if you can only accept party god Zeus, that's all you're gonna get. He's going to have the IQ of a light bulb, and all he's going to do is party. And again, this is a fair enough, because if that's all you see is the god of the eternal Kager, that's all you're gonna get. If the only thing you see is the strict father figure at the head of Pantheon that dispenses law and order, has absolutely no sexuality whatsoever, and has no sense of humor, that's what you're going to get. Zeus is very much the god of whatever you see me as. I'm not going to challenge you on it. In fact, I'll use it to my advantage, because this is Zeus. Think being wily like Odin or Loki. And, when we first got together, it was decades ago, and I was getting into Wicca, and going from being as constricted as you're supposed to be in Roman Catholicism to do as thou wilt as long as you hurt none can be quite the experience. And the Greek gods, in their own way, were trying to wean me off of seeing everything as a sin, and they were actually not doing anything wrong, it was just a bit much at the time. So Zeus was the one that took me kind of under his wing, though I worked with other gods at the time too, and he was kind of like, okay, I know you're new, but this party stuff, it's actually a good thing. It's a sacred right. And I'd be like, nah. And not until decades later am I like, oh, this was right after all. But I wasn't sure, guys. But he was kind of the one that was like, you have our protection, you're safe, enjoy yourself. You're under the protection of the gods. And he'll do that for anyone, especially if you're coming into paganism and it's hard for you because suddenly all the stuff the church was telling you no, or synagogue or temple or whatever was telling you no, you can suddenly do. You can get very scared because you have never been trusted to be a mature adult before and make your own choices, right? Even as an adult in, say, a church environment, you're still treated as a child that's just told no, don't do that. You've never really been trusted as an adult before to go off on your own and make your own responsible choices about dating, romantic opportunities, drinking, whatever else you want to do. And so Zeus can be a good one for getting you settled in. Now, he does have the temperament of a judge, too, because he can judge people. In fact, one of Zeus's sacred duties was he would often grab one of his sons. Some will say Hermes, some will say Apollo. Hermes, I think, would make a little more sense because he's the god of hospitality, as is Zeus. And they would go from house to house and town to town. They would test people's hospitality. Now, that's a double-edged sword of a story because we all know that if somebody's knocking on your door at 2 a.m., you do not answer the door. You just do not. Yet, the person on the other end of that door, they might have a legitimate complaint, or they might be a serial killer. You're not sure. It's 2 a.m. It's dark out. People are knocking on your door. Common sense says don't answer the door, but they understand that it's, if they would come to a door, this is in ancient times, and they would say, we're lost. We don't have much money. Will you please take us in? You had to, because hospitality was the law. Hospitality was the law. Now, if you let somebody in and they tried to take advantage, you could beat the living snot out of them, because as far as I know, that was the law as well. But hospitality was the law because, people had to depend on other people. You couldn't just let people starve to death. So he is the god of hospitality, and he is the god of testing people's hospitality and testing how they react to hospitality. So, like, if you have friends and they're not very hospitable to you, you can go to him and say, well, I have these friends, and, some days you go there and, like in my case, they're like overly hospitable. They're giving you way too much. They're way too generous. And then the next time you go, it's absolutely nothing. And we've talked about that. And only the gods know what's in somebody's heart. And only the gods know what somebody's motives are. And he will say, well, if you don't feel welcome, then you're under no obligation to return. but like I said, god of hospitality, god of treating strangers right, god of, by extension, travelers, but obviously being Zeus, like Odin being Odin, you can say god of everything because he is the one god that can countermand everybody except for, I believe, Hades, because once you're dead, you're dead. Zeus can't say give that person back. Hades will be down there like make me, bro. So, he is a good god to have in that leadership role because as many stories as we have that people today would say that's not right, we're judging him from a Judeo-Christian standpoint. Even as pagans, we can do it. Yes, he is promiscuous, but most male deities that are the head of pantheons tend to be promiscuous. I'm looking at Odin, and Odin's just looking at the ground like, I don't know what you're talking about. Somebody has to found dynasties. So it's actually a thing. And if you think about it, what did Zeus end up doing? He ended up siring the heroes of the age. So he ended up helping humanity in a roundabout way. It's just this is a pagan god. He isn't going to mysteriously overshadow someone. It's going to usually be more immediate. Now, of course, people back then were skeptical, and some people will say the stories are just a metaphor. Now, today, some people say, well, the stories are a metaphor for like spiritual experience or something. We don't know, but yes, he is known for being promiscuous with all genders. He really isn't fussy, kind of like Loki. And he is known in some stories for if you tell Zeus, and this could have been younger Zeus, that you can't do that thing, Zeus will go do it out of pure spite because you are not going to tell Zeus what to do. He can be dangerous if you make him angry. And usually, though, I found he has the longest fuse in the family. He really does. He would rather playfully try to get you around to his way of thinking than to just be wrathful immediately. So, like, let's say he's asking you for something like, say, whatever, and you don't want to give it to him. He is going to have a lot more fun keeping it light and playful and trying to get you around to Zeus's way of thinking because he's very good at this. Dionysus gets a lot of his temperament from the old man, so he's very good at turning on the Zeus charm. In fact, if you're in Zeus's presence, it's too late to run. He's already going to turn the Zeus charm on. He's very good at charming you and getting his way, and it's fine. He never is going to have you break his own laws. He really isn't. And as for, all those horrible stories about Hera and everything else, we don't really know what she would have made of all these things. Can a goddess get jealous because a god is running around? Naturally, but at the same time, they kind of sound like a later addition because, in my experience, Hera would rather have somebody that has halfway common sense to be interacting with Zeus in whatever function you're interacting with him than to have Zeus just wandering around at random because then Zeus gets bored and gets ideas. So, if you deal with Zeus and you go to Hera and you say very respectfully, well, such and such and so on forth, to me, she's like, fine, just keep him out of trouble. She really doesn't seem to care. It's more like some people will say it's an initiation. Some people that work with Hera will say that if Hera actually comes and tests you because you start a relationship with Zeus, and let's admit it, Zeus is well known for this, she's initiating you. She wants to make sure you're good enough for her husband and also brother because these were common brother-sister consorts. We have them in Egypt and Greece and in a lot of other places too, including the Norse pantheon. So she wants to make sure you're good enough for him, and she wants to make sure you're just not, Zeus can be a little too liberal sometimes with his gifts in the stories. So she wants to make sure you're just not after that stuff and you're going to hurt him because he's like any other divinity. He does have feelings. He can get hurt. When he came around this time, it was a little bit of a test to see if I would totally cut loose and abandon my family and abandon society and abandon the channel to go run free for a couple weeks or months. And as beautiful and tempting as he made that sound, I'm like, I'm sorry, man. I'm legitimately married. I have to settle down. I will spend time with you. We can cut loose some, but I can't run around like I used to. And he actually, that was kind of his test. He was like, okay, I wanted to see where you are, see how serious you are about this. And Zeus will spend a couple days, couple hours, couple weeks here, and then, once he's satisfied with whatever Zeus has gotten and made vague Zeus promises, which I don't know. He will make vague Zeus promises. He doesn't lie, but you know how gods are. They will tell you something's coming, and you're like, when? Give me a date. And they're like, mm. So he is good, and he's also a very good god for, gay pride. There's kind of a movement going on now. It's been going on for a while, especially online, to straight wash our Greek gods. The Greek gods are the damn gayest pantheon out there. They invented gay. I'm pretty sure they did. I'm getting howls of laughter back there. I can't think of a single god or goddess that you would term straight in the modern sense. I really can't. And remember, we have misconceptions. Virginal in the original sense just meant you weren't owned by a man, because marriage meant the man owned the woman. I'm sorry, ladies, but you became property. And I think that if two men would have gotten married, I think the lesser man with lesser social standing was owned as well, but I am not a Greek lawyer. You would have to check me on that. So a lot of the ones that we have that they're called virgin goddesses or something like that, they obviously have stories that are so coded lesbian or so coded bi or something like that. Now keep in mind they're aware of what these terms mean, but they wouldn't have used them themselves. It was just as natural as the rain and sunshine for men to like men and men to like women too, and everything else. And with Zeus, it's every flavor of the rainbow, including flavors I think Zeus invented. And he's actually, he is actually really sweet. And I think people kind of are either way too afraid of him. You should have love and respect for every god, but they're way too afraid of him. Or they think he's this party god that's about as smart as a light bulb. And if that's what Zeus thinks you think of him, he will play up to that. He will be the dumbest god you ever met. He will. And he's wonderful to work with because he's all about, the gay pride, but he's all about taking care of the people in his life. So if you're even halfway decent to him, with me, we know it's like I've reached terminal capacity with statues. If he would want a statue, I said, I'm sorry, but you will have to have something handed to me. And in a way, anything, since he's kind of like a all-father type figure, like Odin is the father of all, Zeus is the father of all as well, you could use anything for him, like to represent him. Obviously, eagles, he has a giant golden eagle, but we have a really strong connection to the sea that doesn't involve Poseidon. And you could use anything that makes sense. The one wonder of VR that I took you guys into, that statue was made of ivory and gold, so if you wanted to use elephants to reference the statue, or anything else you wanted to use, you could. Bull, swans, whatever, something taken out of a story or just something that makes sense for you. He's not really all that committed to having temples. I think as a Greek god, he remembers the good days, and especially being Zeus, he remembers the good days. But he's also the smart one in the family that sees just how irreverent people are today. And I am all for people having fun with stuff. But a lot of the stuff on Pinterest, especially about Zeus, is like downright insulting, and it's like we're lucky he's not as bad as people think he is. He was smited everybody already. So he kind of takes what he can get. He realizes he's never really going to reach that status of being worshipped on a high temple again. I mean, for a few select people, yes, but he knows at the same time his people will be being, having scorn and everything heaped on them. And the gods want our love, and the gods love us and want us, even though they know it's a tough road to walk sometimes. But at the same time, Zeus doesn't want his people humiliated for serving him either. He's the god, most of all, that realizes the good old days and the golden age for the Greek gods and all the other gods is gone. He will adapt. He will take what he can get. It's a little sad in a way, but Zeus is practical. He's the one that when Odin kept taking everything for the Norse gods and VR, and the Greek gods got pushed out, he really didn't care. We have, from time to time, for a nanosecond, the main temple has become a very heavily Greek-style temple, but it's only for like 20, 30 minutes, literally, and then it goes back to the normal style, and he really doesn't seem big on it. Zeus is everywhere anyways. Kind of his temple is just wherever he chooses to be. So, overall, guys, he's a great god to work with. If Zeus decides to put his protection or something on someone, it's a good thing. Um, Only thing I could say about popular culture references is they're usually dead wrong. Especially, like books like the problem I have with books like, say, the Percy Jackson series is to make the kids feel good about themselves and to make the adventure legitimate, the gods are suddenly dumb and weak. So if you think the gods are these dumb adults that really need help, that's not the attitude to approach them with. The gods are actually nothing like they were in those books. And that was like my main beef. I mean, normies are going to take gods for the entire history of the human race, however long we last, but the gods aren't stupid, inept adults that desperately need teenagers to save them either. And that's not knocking young people. I mean, we can all help and love the gods in our own way, but it's also not, the gods aren't these kind of silly characters that are one dimensional and they only do one thing, whatever that one thing is. So I had a lot of problems, especially with how Dionysus was portrayed in those stories, and it just makes me want to hurt people, but I won't. So, hearing laughter back here. But yeah, guys, he's overall, Zeus is really good to work with. Whatever you want to work with him on, he's an all-around god. And if he can't handle it, he's honest enough that he will say, go to Athena or go to someone else. And he is a god of truth and law and justice. So he will be that guy that will party with you, and he will be the guy that we ended up settling on like a 43-cent title that had puzzles in it, and then we can make all of our own custom puzzles if we want. So that was ideal. So he is kind of temperate too. So he will encourage you to party, but party like within your means, not go flat broke because, people would do stuff and then they would go to Zeus. And if Zeus was in a generous mood, he would help them. But if he's not in a generous mood and you spend all your money on partying, even though you thought it was Zeus's idea in the first place, he's not always going to replenish that stock. So it's not like we get together with Zeus and we party and we spend all the money in our bank account and then we go to Zeus and we go, I'm flat broke. Zeus isn't always going to instantly replace that money. So we have an understanding, especially with Zeus. I say, if you want something, if you want party time, if you're interested in a pack or something or food or whatever, you have to help me get the funds to get it. And wait until you get those funds and then go do it. Don't do it the other way around because it isn't just Zeus. Sometimes the gods assume being gods, we're just going to somehow magically absorb the cost. So, do be careful. So, I hope that was kind of useful, guys. Overall, he's really good to work with. So, if you guys like what you see, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you later. Bye bye.